Understandably, many people are worried about their businesses at this time. It's a difficult period for many businesses, and of course there is a lot of uncertainty. Questions and concerns revolve around, do I have enough financial security to get through this? Will my clients be financially sound on the other side? How am I going to cover my rent and business expenses during this difficult time? And will the economy bounce back? And these are all valid concerns, not just for photographers, but for all businesses. Now, later in this video, I'm going to tell you how my own business nearly went bust some years ago and what we did to recover. So I thought today I'd come to you with a video about your photography business and things that you can do to mitigate any problems and really use this time to take a look at the way you operate. What can we do to improve the appeal of our business and maximize sales? And what can we do now during this lockdown period to give ourselves the best chance of coming out the other side? As difficult as it might be, try to keep a level head and good business sense. Business is not complicated. It really comes down to a few key points that, if understood, make working through things a lot simpler. So let's take a look at business first, and then near the end of this video, we'll look at some of the things that you can do to help yourself during lockdown. So I'm going to talk to you honestly and from my own experience. I've been in business for nearly 30 years. I've actually run a couple of different ventures, and I've had successes and some failures along the way. In this video, I outline what's worked for me and how I've negotiated challenging business times in the past, and what's important to give yourself the best chance of bouncing back and hitting the ground running when we emerge from lockdown. The first point is do your research on supply and demand. This is without doubt the most fundamental part of business, and one that people neglect to appreciate. Quite bizarrely, many people start a business without doing any groundwork or research, often on just a whim simply because they like the idea of being self-employed or doing something that they enjoy. This is just nuts. Working for yourself and making a success of it takes at least 10 times the effort of just having a decent paid job. And it comes with a multitude of other headaches too. But that's not the main point. The main point is if you haven't done your research or run the numbers, then you're going to fail. Let's expand on this a little with an example. This is Joe. And Joe decides he wants to make and sell hats because he loves hats. Joe thinks because he loves making hats and he makes good hats that he's going to sell lots of hats and lead a happy life. This is Joe's city, and in it there are 100 people. Joe hasn't done his research and he doesn't realise that 50 of them actually hate hats. He also didn't check that there is already 2 other people in his city making hats. John has been doing it for many years and is already well known for his hats, and the other person, James, started a year ago and he's really struggling. Joe, unfortunately, didn't check on any of this. Joe also didn't check to see what John was offering, what his prices were, or what his customer base was. If he had, he would have realised that the demand for hats wasn't as high as he'd expected, and that John has actually only got 10 loyal customers. The other 40 only occasionally wear hats, and many buy them online from a discount store. And James has only managed to get one of John's customers to switch loyalty and buy his hats instead. Unfortunately, Joe already paid for a website, quit his job, bought a lot of expensive hat making machinery to only find out that there is actually already too much supply and not enough demand. This is what supply and demand means. It is the most fundamental part of business that nearly everyone decides to optimistically ignore or just weren't aware of it when they set out. So you can see from that very simplified illustration that it's important to do your research. Don't assume that you're going to make a comfortable living just because you think you're good at something. Doing your research before you start any business is absolutely crucial. When I started my studio business 25 years ago, I'd already worked as a photographer for 5 years and had assisted in other studios, so I knew the industry from an inside point of view. I then looked very carefully at my own demographic area to discover and understand the supply and the demand. At the time, I concluded that there were only 3 credible suppliers in my area and that there was plenty of demand. I carefully analysed all of the potential marketplaces that there would be demand from them, such as electronics, banking, advertising agencies, tourism, hospitality, service industry, and manufacturing. And I started to analyse what these sectors were doing in terms of their advertising, their imagery, and carefully looking at the standards of work that they were receiving from their current suppliers. Could I do it better? Could I deliver a better service? And could I compete on price? One rule that I've learnt from this is don't expect the customers to switch allegiance even if you can offer all 3 of those things. Often, businesses have built a relationship with their current suppliers, and it can take a significant effort to move them away from that relationship. Now, let's assume you've identified that the demand was appropriate compared to the supply, and that you were able to compete effectively with the current suppliers. Then you have to now consider how you're going to reach out to the demand and let them know that you're a new supply option. Know what your audience wants and target them with the right message. This is called targeting your market, and it must be done with the right message and material. In my case, if I was going to target an electronics manufacturer, then there would be little point me showing them my wonderful pictures of fashion, food, cats, or anything else. They simply won't give a crap. Just because Karen on Facebook or Flickr said she loves your photos doesn't mean a monkey's to anyone other than you and her. So think carefully about who you target and what you target them with. One of the most useful things to consider is the target market of the business that you want to work for. What are they trying to say to their target market? If you understand this, then you can give yourself a better chance of winning business by appealing to that and really focusing on what you offer them. There is one simple fact in business. That is that nearly every business always wants to make more money, and that is their primary focus. They only use the services of a photographer to deliver a better message about their products so that they can sell more of that product or service to their customers. And that is it. So, can you help them do that? Don't faff around with this point and believe that you're there for artistic reasons. You're there to help them make more money or to look better. But ultimately, it's to help them make more money. Yes, this sounds cutthroat, but that is capitalism. And if what you do doesn't help them with their business, then you won't be doing it for them for long. Once I'd identified the businesses, the target markets, the supply and the demand, I had to let them know that I existed. Your Instagram page or an email about your website is not going to bring the work in, I'm afraid. I receive about 200 emails every day. I scan past them, and because I'm busy, I often neglect them and they end up getting lost in the noise. Why would any business pay attention to your paltry request for them to look at your website? Find the decision maker. Who is the person that is in charge of marketing, art direction, or who is the boss in a small company? Get something on their desk and follow it with a telephone call and a request for a meeting. Never assume that an email is enough. It's not. Now, this was the first brochure that I ever produced 20 plus years ago. And I designed it to hopefully tick the boxes of some of the industries that I was mainly targeting. This one was a later, more refined brochure that I produced. And this was the sort of smaller postcard mail shots I used to do, specifically targeting the type of imagery that a client would be interested in. Don't send a hotel chain images of electronics, and don't send a drinks company fashion examples. This is just common sense, but it amazes me how many photographers want to show off their work to the wrong audience. As I became more established and the type of clients I wanted to work for grew, I produced a number of books like this. This was sent to advertising agencies and art directors, and I sent them on loan, and a courier would be arranged to collect them after a given period. This gives you the ideal opportunity to contact the client and ask them, did you receive my book? Can I come and see you to discuss it, etc., etc. As I became more established and I had regular work, I used to send out these newsletters showing that I was busy and that lots of companies were choosing to use me. And this was a way of staying in touch with past customers, or letting potential new customers know that lots of other successful companies were using my services, which arouses curiosity. All of this is called marketing. And if you're not good at it, then think about employing someone part-time to handle it on your behalf. Or if you're a highly skilled photographer with incredible work, you might want to consider using the services of a photographer's or artist agency to market you and bring the work in for you. Now, of course, there will likely be a 30% commission for them doing so, and your work is going to have to be absolutely top flight to get represented by an agency. Upskill and constantly improve. Now, while we're on the subject of sending out your work, before you make the decision to go into business, ask yourself, is your work really good enough? If you're a wedding photographer, portrait, fashion, or product photographer, how does your work really compare to that of your competitors? If it's not right up there and you can't confidently say that it's as good or better than your competitors, then you need to upskill yourself. This takes dedication and practice, and you can do that and discover the key differences that will set you apart from your competitors right here at Carl Taylor Education. Now, how can you get an unbiased view of how good your work is? Remember, Karen on Facebook, Flickr, or Instagram is always going to say great things about your shots. It's human nature to be nice, especially if most of the comments are from your followers, friends, or family. The simplest way to find out how good your work is to do what I call an unbiased test. Let's say you're targeting a drinks company. Get your best drinks and liquid images and put them in a folder without your name on the images, and get all of your competitors' best work and put it in the same folder. Then show those images to people who don't know your work or people that may have an interest in drinks imagery, and ask them to choose their favourite images, and if it's possible to explain why. Run this test across as many people as possible. And then when your images don't come out as the first choice, stop crying, find out why, and ask them what they didn't like about image A, B, or C. And try to gain some constructive criticism from this. Be realistic about your own capabilities. Too many times I've seen photographers with delusions of grandeur, myself included when I was younger, and this will severely limit your ability or willingness to learn. Don't think because you know the difference between hard light and soft light that you're some sort of studio master. If you can't explain to me what resonance, refractive index, lighting gradations, shadow density, inverse square law, and fall off are, and demonstrate that you know how to control all of them, then I'm afraid you don't know shit. So get yourself back to school and on my platform and stop pretending that you're a photographer. Now, let's assume that you've got the skills, that there is demand and not too much supply, and you've done a good job on your marketing. Then what do you do next? Stay connected and build relationships. Well, it's all about building relationships. The most likely clients you will get are repeat ones, and that will be based on you doing a good job and not being an arse. And by that, I mean your personality. Do you have the right sort of personality to get along with people, for them to warm to you and to like you? Because if you don't, it doesn't matter how good your work is, people don't want to work with other people that they don't get along with. So you need to ensure your people skills are good too. Now, you can help improve your people skills by joining organisations such as the Chamber of Commerce or networking at trade shows and events, business breakfast clubs, etc., and get into the habit of communicating with people and even offer to give a talk to an audience. All of these things are great opportunities for networking and building relationships and building your confidence with people. But don't waste your time giving talks to the wrong audience. I know one photographer who has spent far too much time doing talks to other photographers rather than focusing on his actual target market, such as other businesses. So think carefully about the type of networking you'll do and whether it will be effective. Think about trade shows. If, for example, you're targeting drinks companies or an electronics company, why not visit those type of trade shows? It will give you an opportunity to learn more about their market, who their customers are, the type of marketing and display images that they use at these events. It also gives you the opportunity to introduce yourself, to leave a brochure and talk with people that often wouldn't give you the time of day. But you need to do it confidently. If you're not capable of introducing yourself politely and making a confident, friendly conversation, then you're not likely to do very well at being self-employed. Once you've built relationships and have clients, then the chance of repeat business are high, but don't neglect collecting data. This is extremely important. People move around. I still work with art directors that have moved agencies 3 times in the last 10 years. But because I've kept track of them, their work and what they're doing, I've stayed in contact and I've maintained a relationship. Build a database. Learn about your clients, their names, their numbers, email, personal email if you can, and log it all down. Every job, every budget, every birthday, anything and everything that you can, and use it. In 5 years' time, when you're trying to remember the name of the art director or the client that you worked with on that great photo shoot that you did, you will be kicking yourself for not keeping a database. Identify your best customers. The 80-20 principle tells us that 80% of our profits actually come from 20% of our customers. Although this isn't always the case, it's always important to see which customers are the best to work for, who pays the fastest, and who needed a lot of chasing. You need to do an honest roundup from time to time to discover which customers are just a pain in the ass and which ones are the best to focus on. And focus on those customers that you're happy with and who pay you on time, and dedicate less time to those that don't. Now, while on the subject of budgets, it's important to know your cash flow, expenses, and profit margin. I'm not going to go into that in this video, as I've already made another video covering that, so I'll put a link to it below. Preparation, awareness, and strength. Prepare for the worst. I nearly went bust twice. From 1995 to 2000, the stock market grew by 400%. People were throwing money around like water. The internet was taking off, and everyone who had a .com was being portrayed as the next big thing. It was all a load of bollocks, and in 2002 the whole lot came crashing down when everyone finally realised that it was all hype. The result was lots of bankruptcies and a recession. How resilient would your business be if it lost 50% of its clients or revenue? Now, this of course is perfect timing. Right now we are staring down the barrel of a post-COVID-19 recession, and we haven't still fully recovered from the 2008 economic crash. Can you survive? Have you got contingency funds to get you through? And are the majority of your clients likely to be resilient because your resilience often relies on theirs? What can you do when things hit the fan? Can you smarten up your act, your message, your advertising, your website? Can you work on your portfolio images, and can you adapt? For example, right now we are going through a very difficult period. The whole Western economy is virtually at a standstill, but does that mean you need to be too? What can you do during this time to be productive? Can you get in the studio and use your downtime to shoot images that will appeal to your target market? Can you reach out to your clients with positive messages showing them your latest work? Is the information on your website up to date, and are the latest images on there? Can you run any special deals for clients to help them encourage work with you? Are there other projects you can consider, such as charity work, that can raise your profile? Is your database up to date? Can you upskill yourself so that when you come out the other side, you don't need to outsource that service anymore? Or can you be reworking any of your previous images and improving them? Can you be designing and working on new marketing material? Can you be delivering smart emails to existing customers while people are working from home? Can you be running Skype or Zoom meetings with your existing clients to stay in touch and talk about future requirements? One of the most astute photographers that I know has been constantly connecting with his clients in a positive way during this period, putting himself in their consciousness. Are you doing this? Entrepreneurialism, passion and motivation. Entrepreneurialism is a key attribute to being self-employed. Essentially, it means being adaptable, spotting opportunities and willing to take calculated risks. In 1999, like many people, I recognised that something significant was going to happen. Something that wasn't going to happen for another 1,000 years. It was the turn of the millennium, to turn to the year 2000. Everyone knew it was going to happen, but only a few businesses decided to look at it as a business opportunity. To celebrate this important occasion, I decided to release a special large format calendar of images and make it available to businesses as a collectible that they could send out to clients with their company logo. Now, I wasn't the photographer on this calendar, but I was the publisher and came up with the idea and worked with another photographer to make money on this project. Now, many of these companies would not normally have produced such a thing as a gift for their clients, but I recognized that given the significance of the year 2000, that many companies would actually jump on board, if I marketed it correctly. I made a lot of money from that project. Now, over the years, I've also shot images purely for stock purposes that have been very successful, and they've sold time and time again, because I've identified specific words that needed describing visually, words like growth, wealth, assets, natural balance, etc. I've published books and partnered with landscape photographers during periods where I wasn't as busy, and sold thousands and thousands of copies. Many years ago, I also recognised the need for a local photo library providing stock images for tourism, hospitality and local business. So I partnered with dozens of the best amateur photographers and created a searchable photo library on CD and then a website. And this was successful for many, many years until the bigger stock agencies came along or others arrived and replicated what I was doing. But I still made money in that period. I also created an online gallery selling mounted prints, which was successful for a few years, but then unfortunately it died a death, so I closed it down. Well, what went wrong? Well, other suppliers came along and overwhelmed the amount of demand. Too much supply and not enough demand. In 2006 to 2007, I recognised the rapidly growing interest in digital photography, and I started running evening classes and workshops, which did very well. Then in 2008 came the economic crash, and some of my commercial work dried up. So I put all of my spare time and efforts into developing the training side of my business. And here we are now with one of the top photography education platforms on the planet. But I still operate and shoot commercially for clients that I've shot for many years. 6 years ago, our business was starting to fail due to the decline in DVD sales and the limited studio space that we were operating from at the time. We wanted to expand into live shows, new courses, but simply didn't have the facilities or the space to do so. My business partners and I took the calculated risk to invest literally everything that we had into new premises, technology, a membership platform, and to relaunch our business from Carl Taylor Masterclass to Carl Taylor Education. We nearly went bust. We took a huge gamble with our own money, not outside investors, and it took a few years of very hard work, but it paid off. But never assume that things can't change again overnight, and I'm willing to accept that as part of business. So business is all about looking for and finding opportunities, and it's something I'm continually doing because I enjoy it. And if you're self-employed, you need to try and innovate and experiment and be entrepreneurial. If you don't find yourself to be an extremely motivated and passionate person, then you're probably not cut out for being self-employed. You have to want to go out and do it, to try it and be prepared to fail. Failure is the best learning tool for success. But if you're not willing to try because you're scared of failure, then it's unlikely you'll succeed. But in business, calculated risks need calculating, not ignoring. I personally know some multi-millionaire business people who had a great idea or product and they marketed it at just the right time. But sometimes that can also be down to luck, the right thing, the right time. Some of those same multi-millionaire business people have launched other things that have actually failed. So sometimes it is down to a little luck. But all of those business people learnt from their failures. Now, of course, platforms like Carl Taylor Education are here to help you acquire the right skills for your photography business, whether that's improving your post-production knowledge, your lighting, conceptual skills, or offering you business advice. But we can't do it all for you. You have to be realistic about your prospects. Do your research and consider carefully the cornerstones of business, supply and demand. Expert advice, knowledge and mentor guidance. Get good advice. Finally, don't believe everything you're told by so-called experts. Many of the people giving out advice on YouTube were breastfeeding when I was shooting campaigns and making a living from photography. The internet is abundant with filmmakers that have never actually made a film, and the only money they've ever made is from a YouTube sponsor. There are photographers that make you think that the shot of the discerning, cultured guy gazing down pensively at his man bag on the top of a mountain is going to get you there. Did it get them there? Probably not. Now, that's not to say that some of these people haven't made a good business. Just be aware that it might not be in the business they're offering advice on. So choose advice carefully. What are they really selling and what real experience do they actually have? Look for evidence that those offering advice have the real world skills to match it. Social media is not the real world. It's not where the real page shoots start. And if anything, much of it is looking to me more like the last .com bubble than a solid future. People that talk about the hustle, the coffee and the lifestyle are trying to sell you a dream rather than set you up for reality. I can tell you now that reality is much tougher, and it's tougher to actually make it in business. If you really want to know how other successful professional photographers have made it, take a look at my guest interviews on Carl Taylor Education. You'll learn the truth and gain the insight needed to put your best foot forwards. And finally, remember, working for yourself isn't for everyone. Many photographers produce their best work when they're just doing it for pleasure. But if you do want to go into business, try to stay balanced. Whilst business can be difficult, it doesn't all have to be cutthroat. Some very successful photographers that I know also contribute immensely with charity projects or giving their time back to the community. Don't let business turn you into something that you don't want to be. Now, hopefully this video has given you some insight, some food for thought, and maybe even a necessary reality check. But if you are truly passionate and willing to put in the work, you can create a patch for yourself, even in a crowded market. And running a business can be extremely satisfying and a rewarding career path. I wouldn't have it any other way. Thanks for listening.